So I stand here at the stage, a humble representative of the Silicon Valley ideology, asked to deliver a very simple message, which is that you are not taking artificial intelligence seriously enough. In fact, the cheeky frame is, even if you internalize that you are not taking artificial intelligence seriously enough, you are not taking it seriously enough. This is because we all have deep cognitive biases towards the status quo, are disinclined to extrapolate trajectories to their logical conclusions, and we struggle to understand exponential trends that don't go up by tens of percentages, but by tens of thousands of percentages. So I will invite you for a moment to close your mind's eye and imagine that the Silicon Valley futurists are correct in their most fantastical speculations. It's the year 2035, and we are well underway in a new global industrial revolution that is consolidating the world economy around the three core primitives that enable artificial intelligence: compute stacks, algorithms, and robotics. In a high-stakes contest between the Free West and China for the character of these systems. Indeed, philosophers speculate their capabilities, having long surpassed human capabilities, deserve moral subjecthood. Their autonomy represents an existential threat, like any smarter animal in the animal kingdom does to the weaker animals, if only because their plans are indifferent to ours. And every day they unveil the secrets of the nature of reality. Human lifespans are extending by decades, and they're foraging the solar system, uncovering new physics. Any poker player knows that with a pot this big, even small odds justify playing in the pot, and I suggest you should orient to artificial intelligence with the same game theory. Briefly, the reason to believe this could come to pass is the scaling law. It says that as you scale the amount of compute behind an artificial intelligence system, you increase its intelligence. This law has held year after year in pre-training, post-training, runtime, in text models, audio models, visual models, suggesting it is, in fact, a law. It says something about the nature of reality. Like those standing in Plato's cave, there is a reality out there. As the shadows on the cave get more and more high resolution, they converge on the nature of that reality. If the scaling law is a law, it suggests a simple directive to scale. American capital markets have mobilized with remarkable speed. $7.5 trillion is committed to spend over the next half a decade to build compute clusters, larger than the Manhattan Project, the highway system, and the Apollo project combined, promising that 50% of all of the electricity by the early 2030s in America is dedicated to powering AI systems. As such, the capabilities have expanded. In the ancient times of 12 months ago, AI was chatbots. By December, they can do long-run tasks. Knowledge work can be decomposed into subtasks, and those tasks can be executed by writing code. And today, we've entered a third regime, the recursive self-improvement regime, where the AIs are doing AI research on themselves. We are well within the exponential scale-up. What does this mean for Ukraine? Humbly, I suggest that we have entered into a new economic development regime. If the post-Soviet regime was characterized by Adam Smith and establishing laws of free trade, it's a bit provocative to say, but I believe the new one will be characterized by a kind of Marxian insistence on interest in the dynamics of capital accumulation. If the future economy depends on scaling artificial intelligence systems, protecting them, and then diffusing them, Ukraine may be in a strong position. With the second largest nuclear industry in Europe, large swaths of undeveloped land, and co-location next to prosperous economic regions, it stands to be a player with strong economic policy in the data warehouse scale-up. Given the tragic privilege of engineers that have confronted reality in kinetic war, stands to play a role in protecting these systems as the surface of security shifts in the concentrations of power and the dropping costs of attacking that power. And finally, as the headcount required to start great businesses has dropped, as we see companies in double-digit headcount producing hundreds of millions in revenue, we will soon see single-digit headcount producing billions in revenue. This releases the grip of Silicon Valley and Shenzhen on the technological future, making it possible for entrepreneurs anywhere, certainly in Ukraine, to build great businesses, a kind of American dream on steroids that's been globalized. I think the default outcome is abundance, and the biggest threats are anyone, whether they're well-meaning or not, that is preaching degrowth, pulling the abundance from the jaws of victory.
Your applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Max. Thank you so much for the opening of this conversation. And now please welcome to the stage the moderator of our AI and Technologies panel, Vladislav Davidzon, journalist and writer, a long-standing chronicler of Ukraine and of the geopolitics of our region. Vladislav, welcome. Please introduce your panelists.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. I'm not a native of a city, but it is my adopted hometown in Ukraine, and I love it. And tremendous honor to be on the stage after having seen so many operas and ballets here. So, my friend Max, he is a remarkable tech visionary. He is a former business partner of Sam Altman. He is someone who founds companies like I Buy a Cup of Coffee. Next, we have His Excellency Mr. Minister Oleksandr Bornyakov, the Acting Minister of Digital Transformation. After that, we have Mr. Gil Dolev, co-founder and CTO of Dream. And last and not least is Mr. Artem Starosiek, the CEO of Molfar Intelligence. Mr. Minister, you're new at your job. You have huge shoes to fill. Your predecessor is now Vice Prime Minister and Defense Minister, which is testament to just how important your job is in this country. Most countries in the world do not, in fact, have a Ministry of Digitalization. Ukraine is at the forefront of digitalization, and we're your guests here, so I just want to know, you've only been in your job for a few months, and your predecessor is one of the most interesting and revolutionary characters in this country. So what is going to be the continuity of what he did, and what are you going to do now?
Well, I think it's worth to mention that I'm in the Minister of Digital Transformation team since 2019, and maybe I'm relatively new to this position, but I was the third employee of Minister of Digital Transformation. And most of the things that we did as a ministry was our initial effort and the vision that we going forward with was formed with together, me and the rest of the team. So I guess I continue what we together agreed on, and I'm focused right now. I'm actually focused on a lot of on AI, and that's the big thing that we do as a Ministry of Digital Transformation. I guess we found a way how to utilize AI in order to introduce a new concept of how interaction between citizens and a government must be conducted in 21st century. And it's a concept called agentic state. It is when you don't have to bother about how complex is a government, how wide it is, how many actors, how many agencies. You just have your chat, you just ask what you want, and you receive it in an instant. So if we take the history of Minister of Digital Transformation or digital transformation in Ukraine since 2019, when we were created, we introduced, I think first in the world, we introduced a concept called mobile first, that all the government services must be somehow optimized for the phone. And another concept called digital state, which was not introduced by us, but we stated ambition that Ukraine is going to become digital state, and we made it. We've accomplished a lot. But the next concept is our next evolution is to use AI in government services, and this is what we call agentic state, and this is my focus, and this is what I'm going to be laser focused on.
Okay, great. Next question is to Artem. You know, there's a remarkable irony in the fact that the Russians, they thought of themselves as the successors to the Soviet Union, and in many ways, the terrible successors. Obviously, we know what's going on. But in some ways, the good things about the Soviet Union was technological sophistication, capacity to innovate, technological edge. That, in many ways, was split between Ukraine and Russia as the two largest republics, and the Russians are now out of the Middle East. There are no more Russian planes flying over Syria, but there are Ukrainian fixed-winged aircraft, drone aircraft, flying all over the Gulf, right? So in this weirdly ironic way, Ukraine has stepped into the breach and become a Middle Eastern power while the Russians wanted to do it, never having had those kinds of ambitions. And also, you know, in the same way that Hitler and what he did put the nail in the coffin of the German language in 1945 as a language of scientific research for the world, this war, not the worst consequence for Russia for what they've done, but this war will almost certainly put an end to Russian supremacy in tech development. I've seen, don't quote me on this, but I've seen articles that claim that Russia is 37th out of 38 developed countries in terms of AI technological progress. Every year they carry on this horrific war against Ukraine. They lose more and more time and territory, and you know, the aggregate effects of how bad things are going to be for them are going to get worse and worse. So, you know, Ukraine has become a real-world laboratory for AI-driven warfare, governance, resilience. What lessons from the Ukrainian experience should the rest of the world be paying attention to right now?
I think I should tell you like two stories. I think first one.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Yeah, sorry. Imagine like you are head of communication for like big European party, and there is like in 3 months there will be election in your state, and you sitting peacefully in your house and drinking orange juice and watching your kids going to school, and randomly your assistant calling you is saying that your candidate for the election is bought a villa on the Sardinia island for 20 million euros, and what's going on? You go into Facebook and watching lots of the local media like Der Spiegel, The Times, and they all spreading the same information. And then lots of the bot networks, they also spreading the same news. And 2 weeks later, when your team analyzed this case, they understand that it was Russian GRU operation, and they just cloned local media websites, and in like previous 3 months, this news was seen like by 70 million people, like in 7 countries, and you just lose the election. And it's like a real operation by Russia, and it's called Doppelganger, and they mostly done this by cheap AI system, and they really interference the elections. And it's really hard to put regulation on this because you just spend in 3 months to understand you've been attacked, but you already like lose the war. And the second story is that Russia is really powerful in the recruiting Ukrainian people. Because they're running automated telegram messages through various publics where people looking for a job or for cheap drugs. And then this AI pushes people to, for example, firstly make a photo of military car, then like in 2 weeks they asking them to make an arson, for example. And only on the later stage a real person operator trying to speak with this person, but 70% is already automated. And it's not only about Ukraine, they run the same operation in the Europe and the UK. Recently there was a case with Starmer door. And first message was that you like really late in the detection such of operation, and the second is that in EU countries usually mostly focusing on the detection and defense, and they usually never attack in response. And I think the main lesson from Ukraine will be that you should focus on attack to win the war.
Thank you for that. So we have an Israeli here with us, which is a great thing. First of all, because I don't know if everyone knows, this is one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world, and it is known as an important Jewish city. Two national movements began in the city, both Zionism and Greek nationalism. I don't know if anyone knows this, but the Greek nationalists were hanging out here. This is also a city of Greeks, not just Ukrainians and Albanians and Jews and Armenians and Turks, but also of Greeks. And both the Greek nationalists and the early Zionists hung out here, and some of the most important theoreticians and practitioners of both national movements are from our city. So it's lovely to have an Israeli on the panel. It's also important because people don't really understand that we're at the forefront of a war that pits the revisionist states against a confederation of liberal democracies. And I've, as a war journalist and as someone who spends time here, I've been bombed by the Iranians and their Shaheds here, while my cousins and my mother's cousins have been bombed in Israel. A cousin of my mother was killed by a Hezbollah rocket on October 8th, and that was paid for by Iran. And Israel, Ukraine, and America are, along with Europe, allies in a massive war. So it's good that we have an Israeli here, so especially one with high-level understanding of security and tech. So, let's talk about the defense side a little bit. The US model relies on private tech giants, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, but these are barely restrained by the state. The Chinese model relies on a kind of state-directed drive and scale. In a conflict of high-velocity AI warfare, can decentralized and profit-driven private tech companies compete with national AI?
So first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. It's great to be here and a great honor to come from Israel to Ukraine. As you said, I think we have a lot of mutual challenges that we are facing together. Regarding the question, I believe that we need to frame this problem differently. Models is trend. Model can be smart today, and tomorrow going to be the newer, the smarter, the different architecture the model going to be. And the nation of AI need to look about how to make AI as a full stack. The model is only one layer in the stack. And talking about national AI, we want to talk about sovereign AI and how this nation can keep the data, the deployment, the infrastructure, and everything in to be on the values, on the decision making, on the deployment and policy, and of course the security. So the national AI need to be something that you can build in your own nation and use it, adopt any model that you want to be in the future.
Okay. Max, back to you. So you've spent your career thinking about decentralized protocols. You've thought a lot about LLMs. You thought a lot about raw computational power. And I'm quite interested how you think about tech architecture eroding national security, which is something that we think a lot about in this part of the world.
Well, in artificial intelligence, there's a central concept, which is the concept of alignment. And the claim is that we have to figure out how to articulate what we value, and then we need to build control systems such that the AIs are pointing in the point in the high dimensional graph of our values and hitting that point. It's a very hard problem because as these systems get more intelligent, our ability to control them may go down. And I think a key solution to the alignment problem is decentralization. Like, we need a vast constellation of models. You can imagine very, very large models responsible for solving computationally irreducible problems in biology and physics. You can imagine small models that are our own models that know us very well and align to our daily goals. You can imagine models for corporations and for nation states. And so it is, of course, the case that these systems should be fully inspectable and controllable by every individual who deploys them. And so I think that architectural principle, the principle of like maximum decentralization, that every individual who's using them has control over them, is an essential one. And then, you know, with respect to security more broadly, we, of course, are entering into escalating cat and mouse game where AI systems are lowering the cost of attack across various vectors, whether that's kinetic and drones, cyber, psychological, biological. The cost of doing violence is going down, but then also on the other side, the cost of constantly monitoring these surfaces and securing them is going up. And so I guess it goes back again to this kind of game theoretic perspective. I think I kind of implore everyone here to make mistakes of overinvesting in AI rather than underinvesting. If you overinvest, you've misprioritized, but if you underinvest, it's of existential concern to you, your organization, your country. And so, you know, spend a minute every day, every week asking, how can I be making more mistakes of being aggressive about my adoption of these systems rather than mistakes of underinvesting in them?
Okay, so the whole panel, you're each gonna take a stab at comparing AI to nuclear missiles, right? Everyone knows that nuclear deterrence was about not using it, whereas AI, when we do compare it to a mass destruction weapon or to a tech innovation akin to the creation of an atomic and nuclear weapon, you know, how do we, you know, is this a serious comparison, or is just when people say this is kind of silly, or is it kind of hysterical? Who wants to start with that?
I love to compare it with the invention of internet or mobile phone rather than with nuclear weapon. But what is no doubt is that it's going to change everything, and there is no way to kind of ignore it. So I guess we need to embrace it. And would it be a weapon of mass destruction or a tool that's going to help humanity? I guess it's up to us. Ukraine now both uses it in defense, in offense, and in military, and in civil. As I mentioned before, like 2 weeks ago, we launched DAI, which is government assistant where AI give you your ability to get government services in instant through the chat. And I guess that's the future, when you're just going to chat with the bot, and it's going to give you give you everything that you need without complex interfaces, without going somewhere, or without thinking how I need to get this. Shall I visit tree institution, or what's the order of those of this workflow that I have to do? So AI can figure this out. But what I see on the battlefield, yeah, it's sometimes it's disturbing if you like start to think it through and try to predict future. But I think that it's really far away from to being like nuclear threat from my perspective. And from what I see, the way we're going is more like to how we can utilize it in our daily life, in our businesses and our operations. So I'm trying to focus on that, and this is the way we're going to regulate it. This is going to be kind of regulation over the world, from what I hear from our European partners. So that's my take. So the conclusion is that AI is going to turn everything upside down, but first it's going to do it not in the military.
Okay.
But then it's again up to us to start like, okay, that's the border. We cannot cross it, but it's going to be very complicated dialogue.
So the arms race metaphor is not one you'd like to. Okay, Gil, looks like you have something to say.
I'm thinking, I don't know, like the minister, but kind of. I believe that the comparison of a weapon is not right, because nuclear weapon is not right, because AI is not a weapon. But I do believe that AI becoming a fundamental element into making a nation to a superpower and supernation, together, of course, with cyber and maybe in the future even quantum. And I believe that AI, if in the past through history we see the industry, what defined power or power nation is industrial technology, military strength, financial, of course, economic. Today, AI becoming this element that describe a power nation. But for that to happen, we need a nation not just having the biggest model or the largest GPU stock on the data center, but we need it to be actually integrated into the fabric of the nation, to be used in education, in finance, in business, as we say, to be efficient. This is going to be the engine to innovation. This is going to be the engine to accelerate any technology and supernation in these days, as I see it.
Okay, Artem, take a stab at that.
From my side, I think that nuclear weapons, it's about deterrence, but from other side, AI is about scaling. And using AI, you could scale everything, analytics, intelligence, and disinformation. I previously told the case about fake news, and they're spreading really on the really fast scale. From other side, this morning I was reading the news about fake calls market in the United States, and for the last 3 years it grew to 1 billion. So basically the scammers, they go into your social network, copying 2-3 videos with your voice, and they just calling your friends and asking for money. And it's really big dark market, and it will be much more like in next 10 years. And for example, we working right now with one European country, and we building for them a system. It's called like cognitive shield. So they have main gap that they not only can detect all these narrative attacks on their state, but they also can't respond to them, and they don't have enough time to react on this. And for the last 6 years, we was recording all the things our analyst was doing during their job, and we trained our local LLM. And based on this, we will be helping this EU government to analyze narrative threats and show how should they respond. So you should really react fast and work with all of these dangers. Thank you.
Okay, Max, nuclear weapons or evolution of humankind?
Okay, for the sake of diversity of opinion, I will represent the futurist take that these are in fact worse than nuclear, because we can deter nuclear, but it could be claimed inevitable end of economic development to deploy artificial intelligence systems that surpass us, and those systems will be inevitably incredibly hard to control. So I want you to kind of disabuse yourself of some of the current discussion of AI risks. Of course, we know those risks. We have college students who don't do homework anymore and their minds are rotting because they're just cheating with AI. We know those risks. We have vast swaths of people who spend more time talking to AI boyfriends than they do to anyone else already. We know those risks. We have, mass propaganda capabilities. All of those risks are well identified, but that's not, when people talk about AI risk, what they mean. What they mean is, imagine systems that are vastly more capable than us in every single dimension, and then find one example in the animal kingdom of organism that is vastly more powerful than another, that is principally aligned to the well-being of the weaker organism. When we build a shopping mall, we simply do not consult the ant farm as to its opinion about the shopping mall. We're not actively antagonistic to the ants. Our goals are just simply orthogonal or indifferent to their goals. That is the risk of these systems. To imagine that you can control them would require a set of achievements, none of which seem particularly plausible to me. First, that humanity could define the point on the grid of all possible worlds that we want and deliver that message to these systems. Then that we could control the system as it navigates to that point. And then once it gets to that point, it will decide that humans ourselves are the best at even creating the things that we value. If we ultimately value love, humans are not that loving. if we ultimately value consciousness, we're not even that conscious. So there seems to be many worlds in which the AI systems want to create a world that is not consistent with the worlds in which we thrive in. And that's the long-term risk. However, I think you can develop, I fear, a fatalism around these in the long run, because I don't see any path out of this. In the game theory, we simply cannot coordinate all the labs globally. If China didn't exist, it might be possible to get all the major AI labs in a room and coordinate the pace at which these systems are developing. But the existence of China means there is always a defector. And if there's a defector, that lab takes over the world. Simply takes over the world. And so the rational thing, if you want AI safety, is to go as fast as possible, because then you have systems that instantiate democratic values. And if you go so fast that there's only a small set of people in the room with the capabilities, you can imagine coordinating. So I both am cognizant of the long-term existential threats of these systems, but have concluded, along with my peers in the industry, that for safety reasons, we have to go as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Okay, so back to you, Mr. Minister. Ukraine, by sheer necessity, existential necessity, has had to move faster, harder, smarter than other players in the game. You've bypassed certain bureaucratic, sluggish traps that Europeans have fallen into. Of course, Ukraine is a very large country compared to most European countries. I mean, it's one of the larger countries in Europe by population. The pool of IT talent is remarkable here. So what is it that Ukraine has to teach the rest of Europe, certainly in the continent, and perhaps to Americans and even the Chinese?
Well, outside of some traits that our nation has, well, it's brave, it's competitive, it's smart. Many of the traits are Israeli can also share, sharing. We are kind of similar situation in many ways. But I guess from bureaucratic or government standpoint, the lesson, I think the major lesson, that those rules that were applied to defense processes all over the world, they are exaggerated. So we removed, I don't know, dozens of red tapes, and it didn't lead to any harm and casualties. So there were very complicated process of registering new defense product or military product. There was a lot of procedures that makes this process very long, like 3 years, 5 years. It takes to test it, to safely test it, to make sure that everything is fine. We have shortened this span to less than a month. And it didn't lead to decrease in the quality of those products. And I think that's the lesson for the most countries, that you could really get rid of half of your bureaucratic rules, and it's not going to affect life of people or going to do some harm. The same with digitalization. The lesson that we learned, that we, for 6 years, we're removing and still removing a lot of human factor, removing like human from the loop in government services. And it's not leading to decrease in quality of the services. So while Europe is increasing the number of bureaucratic mechanisms, we are going different direction. And since we have this political goal to join European Union, I think that Europe has to see and learn from us on how we build things that working, in the same time with the not so complicated as they built. Because they're really struggling with GDPR, with the Made AI Act that is making companies and startups, AI startups, going out of this region. They came up with the MiCA, Market and Crypto Assets Regulation, that they're struggling with. It's so complicated, nobody can really work with that. And I guess that that's not the future for any nation, to make things so complicated that people want to look for another like safety harbor. So that's like generally what I'm thinking about lessons learned from us. But of course, I think the best and the most famous lesson is that we've showed the whole world that with the help of technology, with the right of use of technology, maybe we not invented this technology, but we perfected it in like integrating those technology, implementing in real life, that we coming up with asymmetric solutions to the superiority power of other nation. So I think that Ukraine, like generally, maybe I'm too optimistic, but we can sort of like gave hope to small nations that they could survive with their bigger nations and not be consumed by superior power because of the right use of technology.
Yeah, this actually brings to mind the popular internet memes about you know, the Europeans asking to join Ukraine. You know, the Ukrainians asking in 2022 for Europe and America to close the skies, and now we're asking Ukraine to close the skies over over Hormuz. You know, the European army is now essentially the Ukrainian army, right?
Yeah, but there's another example. In this fall, I think in September or October, we're going to go to Switzerland to share our experience on digital services, how we jumped from 102nd place in global rankings on digital governments to number 3. That's what we're going to do. And not only them, Germany, UK, they learning our experience. Our AI team went to London to show how we're building AI agentic state. And they composing teams in Great Britain based on our experience. That's also what we learning other parts of the world that they're interested and have political will to do so, to make life of their citizens much easier, because sometimes even in developed countries, interaction between citizen and government is so complicated. Maybe there is no corruption, but it's a headache. You go and you have to understand so many things. You have to be prepared, and and you have to spend a week to get a simple service.
Sure. Yeah, you go to America to the DMV to get your driver's license, and you will spend half the day there, right, Max?
Yeah, in Ukraine, you can do this online.
Yeah, in Ukraine has actually I don't know if everyone knows this. Maybe Mr. Minister, tell them about the app.
Well, I guess I guess most of the audience knows, but our flagship product is DIA, which is an app that provides government services to 24 million people, Ukrainians, and it's not working for children. So if you deduct children, it's 77 of all the active population of Ukraine has installed this application. So I guess that's that we changed the mindset that government could be closer to everybody, and you can pull up your phone from your pocket and receive the government service in instant. So that's the culture that we cultivate.
Right. Artem, follow up on that. Is this pace of innovation something that's just germane to wartime, or after the war ends inevitably and Ukraine wins, whether with a collapse of a Russian state or not, can only hope. Is this pace of innovation going to cease, and will Ukraine become just a quote-unquote normal country? Will it have to, download the European pace of doing things in order to integrate into the European continent? What do you think?
Interesting question. I was recently reading...
Into the mic.
I was recently reading the book by Gobs. It's called Leviathan, and he was speaking about why people starting the wars. And he said about three main reasons, and first of them is the competition, because you're always hungry, you always want to eat, and you always want other resources. Second reason was the trust, because you don't trust the person, and probably you should attack first to get your safety. And third part is glory, and you attacking for the reputation. And I think if you analyze this, is the reason Russia started this war, from all these three conditions. And Gobs, when he finishing this chapter, he's saying that there always will be the wars in the world. So probably the next point of innovation will be the place where the war will start. For example, we've seen the drone in Moldova, so probably next innovation cycle will be in the Moldova. And if you don't feel safe and someone attacks you, so you're starting to move much faster. Yeah. And I think it's the main reason Ukraine right now in the position they have. Okay,
Gil, again, you're gonna have to represent the Israeli opinion here, because that's your function. We're all obsessed with ethics and AI, and it is entirely possible that Ukraine will wind up in a very Israeli situation, that is living next door to a very large, well-financed, very aggressive opponent that doesn't go away, and that you have to find ways to live with for years and decades, and has to develop a understanding of political ethics, military ethics, and AI ethics, which does not comport to standards of people who live in, let's say, less aggressive locales.
Some countries don't understand it. Yeah. I think, first, I want to believe that the future might be bright for both countries, not to think about all the time the aggressive and the war, but reality is that this is the way we in Israel lives in the last 78 years now. I must say that this is the reason that I believe, if we'll take AI for an example, how important it is to the nation to have the sovereignty about the AI stack of its own, that it control and not need to be aligned to other nations' rules, governance, policy, but the nation can set their own governance and nation that fit the value and fit the goal that they need to fulfill using this system. Nobody can judge, nobody can understand the need of surviving in this atmosphere. And the needs that you have in Ukraine using technology, and I think teach the world about how using the technology and adopt the technology is much more important than the superiority of technology and things that you did in weeks. I still hear discussions only of years on years of other countries. So to be able to control the AI, to control the system that you need to affect the battlefield, you need to affect the resilience, the digital resilience, the nation resilience is the most important for you guys and for us. And this is why you need to be sure that anything that is so powerful, as we spoke about AI, for example, that you have the full control on it without the need to straight your opinion or change anything to fulfill other countries, as you said, that live in other bubbles about how to use it for your own own.
Okay, thanks. Max, do you have any thoughts about ethics? I mean, do you have any thoughts about ethics? Do you have any thoughts about ethics in AI vis-a-vis the Eastern European, Israeli, Ukrainian situation and how we're thinking about it in Silicon Valley? Because you live in a completely different universe from us here.
Yeah, I will concede that we in California are privileged to not think about kinetic war very often. Let me perhaps then just venture take that's dear to our hearts, and I'm not sure this directly applies to the question, but it's pertinent to the ethics from our perspective, which is that in peace times, like we are standing on the precipice of great abundance. Like this is central to the Californian ideology, that the default, if we can sidestep various tail risks, at least in the near and medium term, is a massive increase in the subjective perception of wealth by every human being on Earth. That by default, these systems will help us to cure diseases that extend human life by decades and then distribute that out to everybody. They will allow people to explore their creativity and their curiosities about the nature of the world, and that indeed sort of the entire history of the West has been the history of trying to better understand the nature of reality, and now we have systems that promise a smooth crank that we can pull to scale the systems up and get more understanding of reality. And so this has always been, I mean, it's an easy opinion to have in California where it always is sunny out and there's been no war deaths in its history. Even within America, this view is not held by many. A lot of the dramas of our local politics is those who believe this in the West Coast and those on the East Coast who see this as a threat and want to tear it down. And so, yeah, I think to me, I will represent that the core ethical mandate is to enable us to develop abundance against the enemies of abundance. Those enemies in America don't take the form of anachronistic and nihilistic militaries. They take the form of well-meaning but very misguided voices of degrowth policies. But yeah, I think anyone who is telling us to slow down the progress of science and technology and economic development is better suited to the dustbins of history and is the enemy. And the default course of humanity is to create abundance, and it's the mandate of everyone here and in the free West to protect that.
Okay, yeah. I just want to back that up. I'm a New Yorker, and he's obviously from Silicon Valley, even though he spends a lot of time in New York and we see each other. No one in New York likes AI. Like in media or the arts or the NGO complex or journalism, we all see AI as like the enemy that's going to destroy our livelihoods in 3 years. Degrowth skeptics are kind of rare, like actual Luddites are kind of rare, but we're all skeptical. Basically, in California, AI good, in New York, AI bad. It's just as simple as that, right? Yeah, so he doesn't disagree. I'm a New Yorker, so I'm a bit skeptical of it. Also, I won't have a job in 3 years, so. Okay, whole panel. We're going to talk about military tech and bottlenecks, right? We're going to talk about the bottlenecks that come with issues of command and control, right? So it's often not the case that the AI is badly intentioned, but it's often the case that we just don't have enough command and control at the kind of final execution moment when someone has to push a button or keep a button from being pushed in order to make or keep decisions from being made. Mr. Minister?
So what's the question? I understand what you're saying, but
I'm trying to reframe this without going too deep into military strategy and tech. At what speed is decision making in AI so fast that there's no ethical way for human decision makers to take responsibility on the battlefield, off the battlefield?
well, that's the big debate on where and how we're going to release this. Well, not a release, like how are we going to give this its freedom? I can give it an example.
Please.
So we had this concept of landmine or territory covered by landmines, but not the regular ones that we like kind of used to. That you like a step on, there is a sensor, and then it's blowing up, making injuries, and then you throw them, you forget about them, and then after some time, conflict ends, and then some children or civilians go there, injure themselves to death or to be disabled, and that's very bad, and that's a huge problem. Then AI stepped in, drones and other stuff. So we came up with the concept of smart minefield, that it's going to be somehow driven by AI, which is going to recognize targets. So it's going to see if there's somebody walking on the minefield and it's shorter than a meter, or he's a meter high, then it's not going to blow up.
The mine doesn't work if it's a child.
Yeah, because it's a child.
Yeah.
Or it's going to recognize a bulletproof vest, and if it says UN, and it's not going to blow up.
Right.
Or it also has sensors, and it detects metal. So if some person walks in without metal on him, maybe it's not going to blow up. It's simple as that. And I really believe that could be fully autonomous. So AI could make a decision. But there are a couple of other thoughts. And I just want to show this by this example that the concept that I just described, it exists. It's technically possible.
Okay.
And some of those concepts we implement on the battlefield. Maybe you heard, guys, of line of drones. That's a project that is being implemented on a battlefield where we create impenetrable lines with a kill zone, where everybody who enters this kill zone, no matter who it is going to be killed. And AI plays a significant role in this concept, and it's already being built, it's being deployed. So I guess that when it comes to defending, that my take is there is no ethical or conventional border on where you need to stop. I would like to make it fully autonomous.
Okay, fine.
That's my take.
Good. Gil, you need to go to the airport in 5 minutes, so maybe give your last response to that. I think you have something to say about taking the human out of a loop.
So we must believe on AI in this situation as well. It might be more difficult, but it's something that it's possible, and as the minister said, it's happening every day now, but we don't need to look at it only on taking life, but also on saving life. The ability to use AI to find inventors or to use AI to understand the situation of your soldiers and to plan the tactics is something that today in Israel, and I'm sure that in Ukraine army is doing daily and hourly and save life every day now. The ability to create using AI the anti-missiles and defense, this is how it's using today without the human in the loop. If the human in the loop make the situation much more slower, it can cost in life in your side. So as much as it's difficult to think about AI in the battlefield, this is something the government and the military must have as a closed loop and must have control about it, because it saves life daily as we speak here in the closed and safe place outside in the battlefield.
Okay, let's everyone give the gentleman a hand of applause. It's his first time here. Have a nice trip back to Moldova, sir. Thank you. Okay. Artem, you are at the forefront of the fight against Russian propaganda, against their threats. Talk a little bit about what it is that you do with your company and the kinds of distributed solutions that you have to these Russian attacks, these bot attacks, their propaganda, to their own usage of AI. How do we use AI on our side to leverage our own strengths against the Russians' attacks?
I think our main business is like private intelligence and due diligence on people for some high net worth individuals, legal companies. But war changed us a bit, and we were now mostly focusing on defense tech. And also we have like NGO called Molfar Institute, and we, as you had said, mostly focusing on the Russian disinformation, fighting their propaganda. And I think it's the main focus we are now working on. And I want to tell you a bit more about the paper we was working for the last 12 months. And basically it's called like foreign information manipulation and interference in the election cycle. And basically we spent last 1 month about speaking with the people who usually doing the psyops from both sides, in Europe, in Ukraine, and also in Russian side, using various legends to speak with them. And we've seen like two common patterns. First of them, it's called like psyops matrix. And when these teams want to attack someone, they basically starting just from the Excel spreadsheet, and they analyzing geography of a country, they analyzing about their population, about religions in this country, economics, and also they going deep in the history, and they looking for who locally fighting with other sides. And then they pushing AI media monitoring over on this. And for example, if some opportunity arise, they looking on this like pain matrix and taking one point and then pushing narratives in the media. And the main problem is that there should be always a human in the loop who validates these attacks. And I think the second problem we have is the local language, because most models analyze really good in English-speaking language. But
yeah, that was my next question actually. But before we get to that, can you give us an example? Like, I mean, just give me a case study of something that you worked on or what you see, and just share kind of what a average counterattack is to a Russian bot attack, or give us a case study.
I think the main counterattack will be it's right now not working like this, but I think in the next 2-3 years it will work like this. So basically you operator who working against cognitive threats and you see a monitor and it shows that your country attacked this way. Automated AI system showing you that is huge risk and it is could like influence your economy. And automated AI system writing you narratives how you should respond on this attack. And then your country have like a local agent network which simulates activity in social networks, and you just push in one button and you counterattack Russian bots.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, you very graciously gestured toward the thing that we should all talk about. I think everyone knows that the more of a language there is in the archives of human history and libraries, the more of that language there is in the subconscious and the totalizing subconscious of these machines, right? So there's obviously a lot less Ukrainian in the world and in the libraries than there is of English and French and Chinese for historical reasons. Ukraine is a younger country. Ukrainian has been repressed for many years by the Russian Empire and then by the Soviets. So there's just a lot less of of a library for the machines to learn on. So what happens is that English, in some ways, becomes the lingua franca of the machines, right? And so what happens is that the machines translate something from Ukrainian into English, then they do the thing, and then they translate it back into Ukrainian. If a Ukrainian citizen's asking them a question in Ukrainian, do we need AI machines that speak every language? Do we need an Estonian-speaking AI? Do we need a Ukrainian-speaking AI, Mr. Minister?
Well, we think yes, and that's why we actually build an Ukrainian LLM, not like fully from the scratch. We take open source LLM. In our case, is Gemma. So we decided to do this with it's going to work as a security layer not to hack this LLM from historical point of view. So the simple example is whose Crimea is? How the modern
Kavo Krim? Who does Crimea belong to?
Yeah, belong to.
Right.
So
ask LLM that is programmed in Russian, right?
You're going to get variety of answers, and Ukrainian LLM is going to give you the most correct, most accurate answer, and that's one of the simplest examples. So the preserving historical context is our necessity, because we're being oppressed by Russia, and we want Ukrainian LLM to be in place to use it in educational purposes. I failed to mention that we're not building just government services, digitizing government services. We also have a project called MRIA, which translated as a dream, and it's an informational system, digital system to automate educational process. But it also has AI component to build personal educational trajectories of Ukrainian children, and it has to use Ukrainian LLM, because there's going to be historical questions asked by children there, and also, of course, the whole process of education in Ukrainian, even algebra, even chemistry and others. So we want LLM speak free Ukrainian language for educational purposes. Now this system deployed on 3,500 plus schools. We aim to reach 6,000 schools till the end of the year. It's going to be half of the schools of Ukraine. And now we have more than 500,000 users in this platform. So we plan to use Ukrainian LLM connected to this system with the right historical context and other benefits that we can build only Ukraine can do that.
Right. I've never asked a Chinese or American-made LLM who Crimea belongs to, but I think it would be a fascinating. Have you done this?
Yes.
And who does it belong to? Who does the American?
Well, they say it's legally Ukrainian, but they say it's like very complicated. It starts to explain the process. Sometimes they say, well, the citizens of Crimea they have right to figure out who they want to be under.
Right. I mean, you can always program an LLM to tell you whatever it wants to tell you. Artem, any thoughts about a Ukrainian LLM and a Ukrainian AI, what that would look like, as opposed to a Russian-speaking LLM or an English-speaking LLM?
I think Ministry of Digital Transformation already working on Ukrainian LLM. I think it's great product, and it's one of the points how we could secure our nation. And it also could be like cognitive shield against the enemies. So I think it's one of the main projects after the war ends, because probably war will be once again like in 10 years, and we will still have time to defend on this. And also lots of people think that like Ukraine is a laboratory for this war, but I think it's not true, because in the laboratory you could make mistakes and you will have nothing bad after this. But Ukraine already done all the mistakes, and we have a great solution. And I think Europe should use our experience and defend.
I actually want you, Mr. Minister, to ask Max a question. I want to imagine that here on the thing, you have sitting we only have a couple of minutes left, but let's say you have, it's a special opportunity. Let's say, I mean, he knows Altman, he knows Lonsdale, he knows, and I imagine you know Peter Thiel also. Let's say you have the top 5 guys in the world in AI sitting up here. What would you ask them? What would you ask Max?
Well, actually, I have a question, and it's interesting to me. There are a number of major AI companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and others. So, is there any future for all the startups that using them as a as a computation basis, or like a major product that they create like additional value, like perplexity? Or do you think it's they're going to survive, or is they just going to be consumed, or they don't have a future? Because I see that like enormous amount of funding going to some companies. They create additional value on top of those major AI players. And I wonder if there is what's your take on this? Because you're close to them, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, and I would like to be clear. I don't speak for anyone. These are my humble personal opinions. But yeah, I think, look, there are different trajectories in the distribution. Certainly, the outcomes that correspond with maximum optimism about the scaling of these systems seem to be immense consolidation around the physical bottlenecks to building these systems. And so every layer of the stack gets commoditized except for the stack that can't get commoditized. We've not really witnessed this in the history of capitalism, right? The previous regime was about specialization, returns to trade. What this threatens is an immense amount of value concentrated in the hands of the people who, through private property, have a violent monopoly on the actual physical bottlenecks, which will probably be the extremely high-tech transformation of silicon atoms into GPUs that only a very small group of factories in the world controls, and everything else above that will become commoditized. And so I don't even know if Anthropic has, it's like, who contains that value? It's essentially it's just going to be the structure of capital accumulation. It's like people will measure capital, or the extreme view of this is that capital will be the substrate of AI, and that that is the wealth of a nation, the extent to which they have these physical substrates, and that nothing above that retains value. Or not, or these systems don't perform that way. But again, I think the expected value is acting as if that outcome is more likely than you think, so that you organize your life, your companies, your country, such that you're exposed to the implications of that outcome, rather than face existential obsolescence.
That is a great answer. I have to say, they did not coordinate that. I sprung that on them. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, my friend Mansour Goncharenko. You're a great man. And everyone here who has come from another country, thank you so much for supporting Ukraine.
Thank you so much.